This is the Mr. Irrelevant podcast. I chose a Mr. Irrelevant name not because I was even good enough to be drafted last overall in the NFL draft, but just because I was a simple average Joe just talking about my love for sports and my learning as much about sports as I possibly can. From football to F1 to really any sport he feels like talking about, Mr. Irrelevant podcast starts now. And welcome back to that show. I am, of course, your host, Connor Bork. That's the intro that we're going to kind of be using just for in the meantime. It's not the best intro. I'm not the happiest with it, but it'll work. I am working towards getting a much better intro here in the near future. But today is September 8th, 2022. It is about 8:50 a.m. Central Time at the current moment that I'm recording this, and football's back. The opening game of the 2022 season is upon us. It is tonight. Shout out to all of my significant others. I tweeted this out this morning. And shout out to all the significant others of football fans who are also not football fans. You are about to lose your significant other on Sundays and Monday and Thursday nights, maybe even Saturdays if they're into college football, probably until beginning of February. So shout out to you, holding it down. Good luck out there. You're definitely going to need it. With that being said, though, we do have some breaking news. A little bit late to the party on this one, but the wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders is retiring. He announced his retirement, I believe, yesterday afternoon. Of course, again, date of recording this is 9/8/22. So yesterday on the 7th, he announced that he will be retiring from the game of football. Emmanuel Sanders played for 12 years in the NFL, starting off with the Steelers, which is actually something I did not know. But he recorded 9,245 yards in total and 51 touchdowns across the course of his career. He played for the Steelers, the Broncos, the 49ers, the Saints, who dat, and as well the Buffalo Bills. Many were hoping that he'd come back to the Bills maybe for a Super Bowl run or maybe go down to Tampa Bay, help with that Super Bowl run, maybe even bounce over to Los Angeles, help with that Super Bowl run. But after 12 years, he's hanging it up, and I have to say congratulations, Emmanuel Sanders. Loved having you on the Saints. That was always a good time, but just congratulations to an amazing, amazing career. With that said, we got football tonight. So the way this episode is going to work, past that, we are going to talk about in depth the Thursday night game, as well as break down the rest of week one, give my predictions, but that'll come a little bit later, more specifically after the break. But talking about the game tonight, we have the Buffalo Bills traveling to Los Angeles to take on the Los Angeles Rams. Now, at the time that I wrote this, they were favored, the Buffalo Bills being they, were favored by 2.5 points. Don't know if that's still the case, but I would be not surprised if that's either gone up or maybe even gone down a little bit. There's been some news either direction that's kind of put into question each team and how they're gonna do. So first off, starting with Buffalo. Of course, they are the Super Bowl favorites for this season. Their defense did get better. I mean, they picked up Von Miller, which is always going to help. They do have Greg Rousseau as well, who's very talented, but maybe not the most technically sound pass rusher on the planet. But, you know, another season in the system, another season in the NFL, another season working on his craft. Maybe he did get better. Still, we'll have to wait and see on that front. Moving on, though, they do have the best safety duo, one of the best safety duos in the league, being in Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. Both of them, at the time that I wrote this, which was last night, they were, in fact, both active for today's game. Both of them had been dealing with some injuries throughout camp, but it does seem like they are at least close to 100%, and they will be back for tonight's game. Now, one of the biggest devastations I want to say to this team is the loss of Tre'Davious White. He's still on the team, but he's still recovering from that ACL tear that he had last season, and it does seem like he's not going to be ready to go in full capacity, or maybe even not at all, for this Week 1 game, but he should be able to return later in the season, which will be big. With that being said, offensively, I mean, they're just as good as ever. They have Josh Allen, who continues to make steps, leaps, bounds. Won't go into too much more detail as I did last episode whenever I predicted him the MVP of the league. I believe I did that. God, how funny would it be if I didn't predict him that? This is going to be hilarious if I did not make that prediction, but I'm pretty sure that I did. I'm going to go check because I am paranoid now. Yeah, I predicted him as MVP. Okay, good. Whew. That would have been bad if I recorded that episode 2 days ago and completely forgot, and edited it yesterday and then completely forgot who. Oh, which, by the way, sorry about the episode mix up. Dealing with some back end stuff. Show will get better. Just trying to get episodes out right now and get them onto multiple platforms. Which, speaking of, take a little break, or not taking like an official break, but just taking a little step back here. The Mr. Irrelevant podcast is available on Apple Music, Amazon Music, Stitcher, as well as Anchor and YouTube. Will be available on Google, but Google takes a while to approve and then post your shows. So do keep an eye out for Google at the very least. But like I said, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube, and Stitcher, as well as Anchor. Those are all the platforms which my podcast is currently available. Moving on, Josh Allen, like I said, offense OP on the Buffalo Bills side of the ball. Stephon Diggs, obviously one of the best receivers in the league on my fantasy team. So I'm really excited to have someone playing in tonight's game because it actually will give me something to look at, look forward to, so on and so forth. And kind of a dark horse here, they have James Cook. This is someone I might go pick up in my league, replace one of my backup running backs with him. I'm not entirely sure why I didn't pick him up in the first place. I think it was because during the draft I kind of forgot about him, but I think that's on purpose. I think the Bills are trying to limited James Cook's touches in the preseason because he's going to be a dark horse back. And what I mean by that is I think he's going to be fantastic. He is Dalvin Cook's younger brother, amazing running back for the Vikings. But he's less of a bruiser like Dalvin is and more of a receiving back, which I think is going to work out fantastically for the Bills and work out fantastically in today's NFL, where the screen passes and passes out of the backfield are very much an extension of that run game nowadays. So I do think that he's going to have a place on this team, and I do think that he's going to be fantastic this season especially. So maybe keep an eye out for him. If he's still available, maybe go pick him up in free agency on your fantasy team. If not, then, you might get screwed over by him later in the season. Who knows? But that's what I'm seeing. Of course, they do have Gabriel Davis. They do have a slot receiver, which I saw something on TikTok about him also being a sleeper. His name is blanking on me right now. I might literally have to Google a Bills depth chart to see who he is. But again, this is just one of those TikTok bros talking about fantasy. So maybe take this information with a grain of salt. But it's Isaiah McKenzie. I'm very stupid. Can't believe I forgot that he was on the team and existed. But of course, Isaiah McKenzie. Maybe keep an eye out for him. We'll see how that happens. Point being, Josh Allen has a lot of weapons. Of course, Dawson Knox as well. I believe he's ready to go tonight. Of course, I know he took some time off with the unfortunate passing of his brother, but I do think that he's going to be good to go for tonight's game. And they also have a very decent, very good O-line. Names blanking on me right now, but in the past they have kept Josh Allen vertical. Not that he necessarily needs a line to perform, as he is a big dude that can move in space and make things happen outside the pocket. Moving now on to the home team for tonight's game, the Los Angeles Rams. Of course, they are the reigning Super Bowl champions, but they did lose some players in the offseason. Of course, they lost Von Miller, who, as I said earlier, went to the other side, if you will, in this instance. And they also lost OBJ, at least for the time being. Interestingly enough, I was listening to a live stream for a fantasy draft last night, and someone actually picked OBJ, even though he in the later rounds, even though he is a free agent. Something, again, I might do depending upon where he goes, because wherever he goes, he's going to be a dynamic playmaker. Came back from a torn ACL to definitely help the Rams win the Super Bowl. Would have been Super Bowl MVP if he hadn't have torn his ACL again. But that man, his ACLs shouldn't go anymore, because I think you only have two, and it's complete replacement when you tear it, so he shouldn't be able to tear it again, one would assume. But we shall see on that front. But they did pick up some players as well. They picked up Allen Robinson, of course. I think he's going to fit into that OBJ slot. He's finally has a good quarterback throwing to him. But of course, moving to that quarterback now is Matthew Stafford. Now, he was diagnosed with thrower's elbow in the offseason, something that was apparently giving him issues for a while. I am hearing that there is a surgery to fix it, but it's something that he's going to have to do in the offseason. And from everything that I'm seeing, he should be good to go for tonight's game. The big concern is going to come later in the season, so it's not going to necessarily be a concern for tonight's game, which is what we're talking about specifically. But maybe that's something that you look at later in the season. Maybe you trade him out. Make sure you have a good backup if he's your starter on your fantasy team. I'm going to talk a lot about fantasy today, apparently, because I'm super excited about getting into this fantasy league that I'm in and getting into the football season as a whole. Everything is just so super exciting right now. Football's back, and I'm absolutely stoked on it. Moving now on farther into the Rams, I do have some running back concerns. What I mean by that is Cam Akers is returning off of an Achilles that he tore last season, and statistically, running backs have not returned well from Achilles tears. They can return well from ACL tears, but Achilles tears does something to them. Maybe their confidence is a lot more shaken because that's their foot. I don't know what it is, but just historically, the running backs have not returned the same after Achilles tears, so that's something to keep an eye on. I know he wasn't taken until late into my fantasy draft, so that is something to just monitor. But moving forward, we do have Trey Regis is his backup. Now, maybe not a lot of you will know the Trey Regis name, but coming from Lafayette, Louisiana, being a fan of the University of Louisiana, both my parents graduating there. Even though I don't go there, I still hold them in high regard. They are my second college team that I root for. That being said, he was a part of a three-headed monster at running back at the University of Louisiana with Elijah Mitchell. He was teammates with Elijah Mitchell, who's the stud running back for the 49ers. And I think, while he was there, he was, of the two of them, he was probably the most impressive in college. They were both insane. They were both very impressive, and I'm super glad that they're both in the NFL. But I do think that Trey Regis was the more notable name. Elijah Mitchell just got that opportunity a lot quicker. And so with Cam Akers returning off this Achilles, and with him maybe not being the same running back that he has been, keep an eye out on Trey Regis. He might impress some people. Might be even like a sleeper dark horse in fantasy. Really depends upon what they do in that offense. Their defense is as good as ever. I mean, they have the best football player of all time on their defensive line, Aaron Donald. Likes to take helmets off. Took that one from Myles Garrett. But with all jokes aside, he is one of the best players. They have a fantastic secondary. Jalen Ramsey. Obviously, they're just a stacked team overall. They're the Super Bowl champions from last season. They did lose a few pieces, but they didn't lose a lot of pieces. And how can I forget that they still have Cooper Kupp? That Matthew Stafford Cooper Kupp connection is something that's out of this world, something that is just insane, and that's going to continue into this season, I do see. Now, my verdict, the way that I see this game going, is going to be very close. I think it's going to be it's hard to say, because typically at the beginning of the season, the defenses are going to be better because see ball, get ball, and the offenses still need a little bit of time to get that connection, to get going, to get the play calling down, to get the plays memorized, so on and so forth. But both of these teams have fantastic defenses and fantastic offenses. I do have Buffalo just squeezing ahead, maybe something, Super Bowl fatigue on the part of the Rams, but I do have the Bills coming out and getting a win. It'll be close. I don't know if it's going to be high or low. I do believe, I don't remember what the line is. I guess I could check what the line is for tonight. Let's see here. Over-under is 52. I want to say over because that's kind of low for two high-powered offenses. But again, for that, this situation where defenses, are better at the beginning of the season, see ball, get ball, we'll see what happens. But it's hard to tell. My gut feeling says over for this one, but we shall see. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and take a quick break. For you, it'll be just a couple seconds. For me, it might be a little bit longer. But after this, we're going to get into my predictions for week 1 as a whole and get into kind of a game that we'll be playing during this regular season. But yeah, see you guys after the break. And welcome back to the Mr. Relevant podcast. I am your host, as always, Connor Bork, in case you forgot during that little intermission. But with that being said, let's get into week one predictions. So this season, we'll be predicting every single game's outcome for the regular season. Probably we'll do this for the postseason as well. But at least for the regular season, I'm actually going to keep track of my record. See how I do, see how my predictions go. Now, keep in mind that these predictions, not a whole lot of research went into them. I do have, basic knowledge, I would like to think, of all 32 teams. I've, of course, already gave my prediction for tonight's game, which is going to be the Buffalo Bills. So mark that down as my official prediction for tonight. But yeah, we're going to keep track of all of those predictions and just see what the outcome is at the end of the season. Starting off now with my team, of course. The New Orleans Saints are heading over to Atlanta to take on the Dirty Bird Atlanta Falcons. Shout out Falcons fans. Shout out the Houdat Nation, more likely. But I do have the Saints winning this one. I don't think that's going to come as a surprise to anyone. Don't think I need to say, I don't think anybody would question my biases for this, or my bias is, for this one. Because the Saints are just a better team overall. Jameis Winston returning after that torn ACL, but he did look good at the beginning of last season. O-line's a little bit in question where it hasn't been in the past. But weapon-wise, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, who's poised to come back in a big way. Chris Olave was picked up in the offseason. Jarvis Landry, Juice, was picked up in the offseason. Defensively, we have one of the best defenses in the league. Even after the C.J. Gardner-Johnson trade to the Philadelphia Eagles for a bag of bolts, by the way. Not happy with that one. D-line is absolutely fantastic. The only question mark I have is kind of still at the DB position with Marcus May being arrested. A little concerning, but we'll see what happens there. Moving now on to the San Francisco 49ers taking on the Chicago Bears. Again, San Francisco wins, but I do think it's going to be close. QB issues over at San Francisco, over on the 49ers side. I do think that Chicago is definitely the less talented roster, but they at least have an established quarterback. Young quarterback, yes, but he's established in that system. San Francisco 49ers, on the other hand, Trey Lance, same draft class, but hasn't necessarily played as much meaningful football as Justin Fields has. Though he does definitely have the better weapons, especially with Deebo Samuels and George Kittle. So like I said, I do think that the San Francisco 49ers will win, but I do think it's going to be close. Moving now on to an AFC North battle. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. Do have Cincinnati winning this one. Definitely the better team. It's kind of the same situation with Pittsburgh. They don't really have a QB issue like Pittsburgh does. Joe Burrow, though he did miss some training camp and is still listed as questionable, I do think that he's going to be just fine for tonight's game, and I do think he's going to be slinging the ball around. They already have that fantastic chemistry with their wide receiver room, so I do think that Cincinnati's going to win. I don't think it's going to be close. It's going to be not going to be a blowout, but it's going to not be close by NFL standards, I guess is the best way to put that. So Cincinnati does win in this Week 1 matchup. Moving right along to the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Detroit Lions. This one was close. Philadelphia definitely, on paper, has a more talented team, but I do like the Detroit Lions. Call me out on having a Hard Knocks bias here, but I do think the Detroit Lions are going to surprise some people this year. And I do think Philadelphia is going to surprise some people this year as well. I like both of these teams. Like both their quarterbacks. Jared Goff, maybe has reached his ceiling already, but he does have that experience both in the postseason and in a Super Bowl. So, of course, I don't really like to talk about that Super Bowl as they screwed over my New Orleans Saints to get there. But regardless, I'm over it. Not really. I do think that Philadelphia is going to come out ahead on this one, just barely, on the fact that they have the most talented roster. I'm picking talent over coaching in this situation. Sirianni's been doing a fantastic job in Philadelphia, don't get me wrong, but I'm definitely going to go ahead and pick Philadelphia, but I do think this one's going to be a close game. Moving right along to another AFC East competition, we have the New England Patriots taking on the Miami Dolphins. New England kind of had a lot of question marks going into the season. I don't think I'm the only one, and I don't think I'm going to be yelled at in the comments or anywhere for saying this. But I do think that I do think that New England's had some question marks on the offensive side of the ball. Who's calling the plays? Are they going to be able to work? Are they going to have the chemistry? I mean, they changed from a power run scheme to a zone run scheme, and their offensive lines look like they haven't been flourishing in this new system. So it's concerning. But in Belichick we trust, right? I do have some concerns, but at the end of the day, you kind of have to trust Bill Belichick to get it done. In Miami, they have Tua, they have Tyreek Hill now. Their defense is stacked, their offense is stacked. New head coach who I think is going to be a lot better at using Tua because he's an offensive-minded coach, whereas Brian Flores, of course, is on the defensive side of the ball. I actually have Miami winning this one. Maybe it's going to be close, but I didn't list it as a close win. But I do have Miami winning this one off the fact that I think that their offense is meshing and has a better connection at the current moment than New England. Not to say that New England's not going to be able to figure it out down the stretch, because I do still have that faith in Bill Belichick. He can do no wrong at this current time. So I'm picking Miami to win this one, though. Next up, we have the Baltimore Ravens taking on the New York Jets. I mean, with the news that Zach Wilson's going to be out for four weeks, is it? Excuse me. For 4 weeks, is it? And footsteps flow. Joe Flacco is going to be taking over the helm of the New York Jets. I do have the Baltimore Ravens winning this one. I think I would have had the Baltimore Ravens winning this one even if Zach Wilson was in, simply because Baltimore is a better team. A lot of players coming back from injury. Didn't really add a lot of players. Lost Marquise Brown, of course. But they still have Mark Andrews, so they still have a fantastic O-line, fantastic running backs, and Lamar Jackson, who's going to be balling out. And if he doesn't get a contract done by tomorrow, will be balling out for his future. So I do have Baltimore winning this one. New York Jets I think they're gonna have a decent season, especially when Zach Wilson comes back. Joe Flacco's fantastic quarterback, Super Bowl champion, obviously, so can't knock him. But he is on the latter half of his career. He is older. I do think he'll be a fantastic veteran presence for Zach Wilson, and I do think he'll be able to win some games in this 4-week span that he'll be the starter. But in this instance, Baltimore is definitely going to be the victor here. All right, moving right along, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Washington Commanders. Jacksonville's going to win this game. I'm just going to start out by saying this is kind of a suck bowl in the first week. I think Jacksonville's going to be a lot better than they were last year. I don't know about Washington. They have Carson Wentz, of course. It really depends upon what version of Carson Wentz they get, with what Ron Rivera can do with Carson Wentz. Of course, he has Terry McLaurin, so maybe that'll help him, but I don't see it being another good season for the Washington Commanders. I mean, they need a reset. Not a head coach. I think their head coach is fantastic. That organization's just kind of in the weeds right now. So be interesting to see what they can do this season. Definitely have them, having a high draft pick going into next year's draft. Jacksonville, they could surprise some people. I definitely think Jacksonville could surprise some people, especially in that division. All right. Another revenge game here. We have the Cleveland Browns taking on the Carolina Panthers. I do have the Carolina Panthers winning this one. Look, Cleveland has an amazing defense. Don't get me wrong. They're my fantasy defense, at least right now. But they have a lot of question marks on offense. They have a fantastic running back room. Nick Chubb is also one of my running backs. But Jacoby Brissett, he has started in this league before. He has looked decent as a starter in this league before. But he just doesn't have, I don't know. There's just something, my gut feeling that says that, in revenge games, the one that's always been done wrong, the football gods always gift at least one. And I think this is the one that Baker Mayfield's going to get. I'm a big Baker Mayfield fan. Went to the same high school as he did. Not at the same time, but go Cavs if you know what that means. He was a legend in my area. Also went to the same high school as Garrett Wilson, a new New York Jet. Did get to see him play in high school. He was insane to watch in high school, if you were wondering. But I do think that Baker Mayfield's going to get this one done. I've been a big Baker fan ever since I started going to his high school, learning who he was, who he is, and I do think he's going to get it done at Carolina. He's the best quarterback Carolina's had in a while. So and Carolina has some weapons, definitely. So I think that this is going to be a fantastic game for Baker. I think he's just going to get to go out and ball. That's literally what I think it is. Not necessarily much game planning. I don't think it's going to go into this game. I think Matt Rule's just going to let him go out and ball, and sometimes that's when he plays his best ball. He's fully healthy, so yeah, I see Carolina coming out with a win on this one. Moving right along, we do have a Another matchup. We have another division matchup, I meant to say. We have Indianapolis versus Houston. This is an interesting one. I'm high on the Houston Texans for some reason. I do think that they're gonna have a good season. I'm interested kind of to see how Davis Mills continues to develop. I do like him as a quarterback, actually. Thought he did really well. Probably the second best rookie quarterback from last season. So I'm really intrigued to see what this team does. They don't have the most talented roster. Of course, Lovie Smith is the head coach. Do like him. Wasn't a big fan when he got named head coach. But now that I've kind of he's talked to the media some, and I've kind of gotten to know him more, learned English is a fantastic language that I definitely know how to speak. Now that I've gotten to see him and remember who he is, remember why everybody loves him, pun intended, I think that he's going to have a fantastic season, and I think Houston's going to surprise some more people. Not a lot of sucky teams this year, in my opinion. Indianapolis, though, is going to get the win. Matt Ryan, they have him. Frank Reich likes to call the game based off of what the quarterback is good at. Matt Ryan's fantastic at play action. That means Jonathan Taylor's going to get a lot of touches, has a lot of weapons, maybe could use some more receiving weapons. But other than that, fantastic O-line, fantastic defense. I think Indy's going to get it done here in week 1. Moving now to the New York Giants versus Tennessee. Do I even have to really talk about this game? I mean, the Tennessee Titans are going to absolutely demolish the Giants. Defensively, the Giants are decent. I believe Kayvon Thibodeau is going to be good to go for week 1, I believe. But will he be 100%? Who knows after that chop block incident. But yeah, I mean, the New York Giants are just not good. New head coach, new regime. Saquon Barkley, kind of, it's a prove-it year for him as well as Danny Dimes. If neither of them ball out this season, then I think they're both going to be on the move. And I think New York is going to poise himself to get one of those top 3, maybe even 4 quarterbacks in this year's upcoming draft. Because there is some good quarterbacks coming out of the draft this season. So that is something to keep in mind if your team is looking for one. Moving right along now to Green Bay versus Minnesota. This is tough. Never really been a fan of Minnesota. They've screwed me over. They screwed the Saints over more than once in the playoffs. But just looking at them on paper, they are a very talented team. Of course, they got both of the receivers that they quote unquote wanted in the draft with the Jalen Reagor trade. Wow, that was a lot. But I mean, Green Bay Packers back-to-back MVP Aaron Rodgers. Never been a real big Aaron Rodgers fan of him as a person. As a quarterback, though, he's undoubtedly very, very talented. But he's missing his number 1 receiver from last year. Will Allen Lazard be able to take that step up? We don't know yet. Will those young guys be able to finally run their routes and get that separation he was asking for in the media? Again, we don't know that at the moment. So I actually have Minnesota coming out and win this one. Green Bay has a fantastic defense, but Minnesota has Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson and Jalen Reagor and a bunch of other people. Oh, Adam Thielen. They are stacked. Primetime Kirk Cousins is a concern, but he's had a winning record. He just got paid. We'll see what happens, but I do think Minnesota wins this one. Maybe it's close. Maybe it's a blowout. Green Bay Packers have been blown out in the past. Saints, week 1, last season, 4 touchdowns. 5, actually. Was it 4 or 5? I don't remember, but they got blown out. Anyways, moving now to Kansas City versus Arizona. This is an interesting one. I do have Kansas City winning this one. I'll give that up right now. But it's because Arizona is missing some players. Of course, D-Hop, suspended for first 6 games. Hollywood Brown, though he was one of Kyler Murray's weapons in college, he got arrested. I do believe he's playing, but that's still kind of a question mark. We'll see what happens there. Maybe that's more of a season concern than a game concern. But I still feel like Kansas City, more complete team. New receivers coming in. I think Juju Smith-Schuster actually is going to do really well in this offense, and I think he's going to have a fantastic season as the number 1 receiver here. But, especially coming off injury. But, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes. I go to Tech now, wreck them. The only jersey that I currently own is a Patrick Mahomes jersey. So call me a little bit biased, but I do have Kansas City winning this one. Los Angeles. What is this game that I have listed here? I obviously was tired last night. I have the Rams playing the Chargers. What did I do? Oh, good God. Oh, Las Vegas Raiders. That's what it is. It's LV, not LAR. Okay. Las Vegas Raiders are going to be taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. I do have the Raiders winning this one in a close matchup. Sorry for the microphone pops if you're getting any. I do have the Raiders winning this one on the simple fact that they got that number one receiver, right? They got Devontae Adams, who already has a connection with Derek Carr. I mean, running back by committee, so they're always going to have fresh legs in the running back room. Maybe not the best thing for Josh Jacobs, who I am kind of high on, but that's a little bit of a fantasy, peak. If you have Josh Jacobs, maybe hold out on him, see if he gets majority touches tomorrow, or Sunday, sorry. Because, of course, that's kind of been yet to be seen. But moving now to the Chargers, they are a very talented team. Do not get me wrong. They are a quietly stacked team. Defense, incredible. Derwin James, of course. But just looking at the team, I don't know. There's just something like Justin Herbert, yes. Keenan Allen, yes. I think Khalil Mack, for crying out loud. I just have a better feeling about the Raiders. For some reason, I just feel like their defense is also stacked. Secondary, as I would have known, because I attempted to become a Madden YouTuber last season and play with them, and especially because they got rid of Mullins. Their secondary is a little bit concerning. So maybe that is something to be concerned about. But I do still think that in this week one, the Raiders are going to pull out a victory here. This is a very difficult division. I think anyone from this division can win the division and go on to be the Super Bowl champions. Like, this division, I think, is insane. Moving right along, of course, to the Tampa Bay-Dallas game, which is a Sunday night game. Question marks about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive line. They do still have, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, picked up Julio Jones, who's also on my fantasy team as a sleeper because I think he's going to pick up that Gronk role in the red zone, so be a touchdown hawk. Defense stacked as ever. Dallas Cowboys, a lot more questions on their O-line, especially with Tyron Smith going down. They lose Amari Cooper to the Browns. Is Zeke going to have a good year? Is it going to be, Tony Pollard's year? Are they going to both have a year? Who really knows? Dak Prescott is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, of course. Defense, Micah Parsons, the Diggs brother. I don't know. It's an interesting one. I don't think Dallas is going to do too well. I do think Philadelphia takes that division. And I do think Tampa Bay takes this first game, even with the questions at O-line for the Bucs and with Brady, marriage in question. This could be revenge season Brady. This could be a combination of Last Dance and revenge body Brady. And if that's the case, of course, I really hope that their marriage is going okay. I hope they, for the sake of the kids and for the sake of their happiness, they work this out. If there is anything to work out, as it's been said in the media, but if they are going to separate, and we're going to get revenge season Brady, as well as Dad Brady, as well as Last Dance Brady, I'm feeling better every single day about this Tampa Bay Super Bowl pick. So, with that being said, I do think they're going to win on Sunday night. Then the last game of the week that we'll be predicting is the Monday night game, which is another revenge game. We have the Denver Broncos versus Seattle. I don't need to necessarily justify my pick in saying that Denver's going to win this one. Sorry about it, Declan. My buddy Declan is a massive Seahawks fan. He's been super high about Geno Smith. He feels okay about the season. But, I mean, come on. Russ has so many weapons. Their defense stacked. I mean, he didn't go to Denver because they were rebuilding. Let's just put it to you that way. He went to Denver because they were close to just needing a quarterback, or just being a quarterback away from doing something big. And they got that quarterback, so we just need to see how that goes. But I do think his talent and the talent of the Denver Broncos overall is going to beat out Seattle. I know they have DK Metcalf. I know they have Jamal Adams. But I do feel really good about this Denver Broncos team for this week at least. So that's my picks. I'm going to do just a quick rundown again. I have Saints winning, San Francisco 49ers winning, Cincinnati Bengals winning, Philadelphia Eagles winning, Miami winning, Baltimore winning, Jacksonville winning, Carolina winning, Indianapolis winning, Tennessee winning, Minnesota winning, Kansas City winning, Las Vegas winning, Tampa Bay winning, and the Denver Broncos winning on Monday Night Football. And with that, that is my Week 1 predictions done. And before we head out here, which we will be doing here soon, just a couple of housekeeping things. Did figure out a way that I can post polls on the episodes on Spotify, so polls and Q&As. So watch out for those if, get some engagement, get you guys talking about some certain things. I'll try to have one for each episode, but we'll see how that goes. Follow me on all the platforms. At the moment, we just have a Twitter for my personal Twitter and the show's Twitter. Personal Twitter's at ConnorAssassin5. Okay, so the show's Twitter is going to be at the Mr. Irrelevant P. That is at the Mr. Irrelevant P. We're also located on, as I said earlier, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Podcast, Stitcher, Anchor, and coming soon to Google Podcasts because they are taking a little bit of time to get the show out there. But pretty much anywhere. Oh, also on Pandora and SiriusXM podcast, I think, through Stitcher. Not 100% sure, but they said that they will be posted there. Let me know if you find me there. But I will be live tweeting tonight's game, as well as coming out with the show on Tuesdays and Thursdays at around 5 p.m. So I hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll catch you all in the next show. Football season's upon us, guys. We made it. Let's go have a good one. Peace.